Welcome to Chronic Adventure, a podcast about living with chronic illness where some days you feel strong, some days you rest, and some days you laugh because what else are you going to do? I'm Tamara, and this is my real life journey of living with MS, navigating movement, identity shifts, and learning to expect more than okay. This isn't about pretending everything is going great or having it all. It's about honesty and humor and finding a way to live well anyway. If you're living with a chronic illness or learning to navigate things differently, you're in the right place. All right. Today's episode 1, is about my diagnosis. Looking back, the signs were there, but like many of us, I ignored them. They were easy to explain away. I was a busy mom. My heart rate would spike for no reason. I felt overheated, short of breath. But like I said, I was a busy mom and I had to put that aside to take care of my family. I was overly fatigued. I felt up and down with emotions and days I just couldn't get out of bed. So I thought I was depressed. And then, my adrenals weren't working right. And I just kept taking vitamins and going to doctors and trying to figure it out. So I put it all to the side. At the time, I started also training for my first 100-mile bike ride. And looking back, here's what I noticed. Before the event, I had 5 months to train. And I'd go up a hill and my heart rate would spike for no reason. And again, ignored it. I would get muscle cramps, muscle aches, muscle spasms. And my friend that was training with me was older and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. But I was 39 and I thought, oh my gosh, getting close to 40 really sucks. Maybe I'm going into menopause. I just kept Googling and making things up. So we're training for a 100-mile bike ride, which means we had these long 50-mile practice rides. And I would push my body through it. So I trained like this for the next 4 months. Our event comes up, and on the day of the ride, I make it to mile 72. And on this hill before this mile, check in at mile 72, I almost didn't make it up the hill, but I realized I've got all these bike people behind me. And if I stop, I'm going to fall and I'm going to take out a bunch of people behind me. So I push my body to the limit, make it up the hill. My heart rate is so out of control that I stop at the EMT station and say, can we just check this out? Well, it took 20 minutes to get my heart rate down. And he said, maybe you shouldn't finish the ride. Have you met me? I was like, no, I am finishing it. You can follow behind me in a van, in the SAG van, and make sure I'm okay, but I am finishing this ride. So they did, had the creepy white van, and I giraffed behind my friend for the rest of the way. Something in me just said, this may be the last time you do this ride. My body just fell off. So I get home, and these are the signs I can no longer ignore. When I get home, I cannot stay awake. I slept for days. Well, I did try to say, I just did a 100-mile bike ride. Of course I'm tired, but I am really tired. I almost go into Instacare, but I'm like, I did a 100-mile bike ride. I am getting these heat flashes and I can't explain them. They're not hot flashes. My whole body would just heat up and I would get a little off balance. And then one morning I went to get up and was so dizzy, I fell right over getting out of bed. And the room was just spinning. So I go into my primary care physician who sends me to a heart specialist, and then sends me back to my primary care because they didn't find anything wrong. They even put me on a heart monitor for a week. Didn't show anything. I would leave its primary care physician's office and not be able to drive home. These symptoms are annoying. Something's wrong. And then it hit me because I'm Googling still. It's probably my sinuses. So I make an appointment with the ENT and he's the one that ordered the MRI. And I think he's getting pictures of and images of my sinuses. I get called in for the results. And that's when I heard, you most likely have MS. Something is wrong with your brain. And he starts showing me the MRI images. And I feel like I'm just going into a fishbowl. I'm showing me abnormal MRI images. I don't know what that just was. I'm going to edit that out. So I am by myself and I am scared to death. I am trying to listen to what he's saying, but really all I can hear is something's wrong with my brain. I've got to go home and tell my husband and tell my children, and there just seemed to be no logic to it. Something's actually wrong, and I go into a full-blown panic. Well, the symptoms continue to worsen. And I'm trying to get into a neurologist. They're months out. In the meantime, had my yearly gynecologist visit, and she was the one that said, um, I know somebody. I was bad enough. I'm not driving. I'm trying to teach. I'm still trying to teach. I look like a drunk Zumba instructor because I'm off balance. People are driving me to teach classes and pick me up, and it was crazy. But I finally make it into the neurologist. And this is, mind you, within a 4-week span. And he opens his office early, gets me in. Before I know it, I'm hooked up to IVs. Steroids are pumping through me, and I'm not even fully understanding what MS really is. And it was just a whirlwind after that. I'm scared. They're not explaining it in terms I really understand. And my husband's trying to absorb it all. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to really say to my kids. They're seeing me hooked up to, coming home after being at the hospital and doctor visits. And at the time, I think they were 8 years old to teenage years. And some of it they understood. They're seeing me just asleep on the couch constantly. And it was kind of a scary time for all of us. So what came after that was years of being on medications, different medications, trying different things because their purpose was there is no cure for MS and they're trying to keep me out of relapses. And so they're trying to keep my body from going into symptoms again or getting worse because it's a TikTok that, if you have a relapse, you never quite go back to that baseline. The brain damage keeps worsening. So MS is a nervous system disorder. It is parts of the brain that are the myelin sheath is thinning and signals are getting mixed up, messed up, depending on where those lesions on your brain are. They affect different parts of your body. Could be walking. It could be your speech, cognitive, memory. So what ends up being affected on me is definitely memory. At the time, I could be talking backwards one day. There was a day that I went to get an egg out of the fridge to crack it into a bowl for a recipe I was making. And instead, I just looked at the floor and dropped it on the floor. No reason whatsoever. And I'm looking at it like, I know I was headed to the bowl. What did I just do? It would be weird things like that. Or someone would say, you just said that like 3 times. You repeated that. Or there's common words I cannot find in the wheelhouse. And I may or may not edit all of that out of these podcasts because while I am pretty symptom free now, that permanent cognitive is me pausing and finding a word or repeating or forgetting what I just said 30 seconds ago and saying it again. So it's, really fun when people are talking to me and they're saying, are you really listening to me? And I have to really dial in. So yeah, going back to work full time has been really fun because I have to really be on and it does tire my brain out quicker. But like I said, we'll get into it. I really am pretty symptom free these days. And there are things that will trigger symptoms now, but for the most part, I'm better than ever. When that diagnosis hit, though, and those years that I spent trying out new medications, there was one that I went on for about 5 to 6 years and didn't really understand what I was on. I think that's with a lot of things. We go to doctors, they tell us what to go on. We just trust them 100% and go, okay, I'll try that. Yeah, I want to feel better. I'm going to trust you 110% that you know what I should be doing. So I did. And it came with a scary side effect. And the only way to know that it was affecting you was worsening of symptoms. And to me, that would just feel like a bad relapse. But it would be an infection going straight to the brain because the medication I was on opened the blood-brain barrier and it could carry an infection straight to my brain. I was on that for 5 years. 6 years after I was diagnosed, I was living in northern Utah, managing a gym, trying to work, but I was also faking through how much worse I was getting. My walking was being affected, and amounts of stress. My husband had lost his job. We were starting over. I think we lived with my mom for a while. And so I'm trying to work, be in this professional job, teach 10 to 12 classes a week. And at the same time, my symptoms are getting worse. There was a day that I drove home from my second job into the driveway and I had a cane in my car because my legs would be so done that I'd go to get out of the car and I couldn't. So I kept a cane in my car and I would use that to get in the home. But one night I got home and I had to call my husband from the garage and say, please come get me. Like I am done. And it was at that point I thought, I have got to do something different. I have got to figure this out. And that's when I started thinking about moving. In me, I knew I needed to change my diet. I needed to start researching more about how to naturally figure this out. The first thing I did was took gluten out of my diet, and I felt so much better after. And I'd had MS for like 6, 7 years, and I decided to take gluten out. I was having stomach issues and sleep issues, and the research I did said, let's try this. Let's take inflammation down. So that's what I started with. I took gluten out and I started sleeping through the night, lost a bunch of water weight. So I'm feeling good. I'm like, okay, we're on the right track. Vitamin D deficient. I'm like, I have always wanted to move south. I want to get to southern Utah. I really love St. George. I love visiting St. George. So that was my next step. But how are we going to get there? And one thing after another led to us being able to move down to St. George in 19. My hope was that I was going to get into a better environment and more sunshine and be able to be outdoors more and less stress. What I also didn't realize, though, is we would be moving to cleaner air and how much that affected us as well. So I changed diet. I'm starting to change environment and stress levels going down, and it little by little starts to work. At the same time, though, I'm still seeing my physician who decides to put me on a different medication. And for reasons that I won't get into now, but it was one that almost killed me. And for those who remember this time, it was a few years ago, but I was living down here and it almost cost me my jobs. My health got worse and I became a different person mentally, so much so like I did a 180 and it was a scary, miserable time. And it took me 9 months to figure out it was the medication I was on. But because of what I was on, it would also take 6 months to clear out of my body. And at that moment, I decided there was going to be no other toxic drug going into this body of mine. And I was done. I was done with disease modifying drugs. Came off it all. And little by little, I start feeling really, really good. I have changed my diet. I have dealt with something so big and huge. My MS is not hereditary. No one else in my family has MS or nervous system disorder. But do you know what does happen with the body and inflammation? When we are in environments and situations where we create so much stress and live through something traumatic, it will come out physically. I know, having had a traumatic experience when I was younger, that was so traumatic that from the time I was a teenager until well into my 40s, I had not dealt with something. Up until I got diagnosed at age 39, I had lived in such a state because I pushed it to the side like many of us do. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't deal with your crap, deal with trauma. And yes, when you're ready, but if you don't deal with it, it will come out 100% physically. There's no other way for your body to handle it. So one, I did the hard work and I dealt with it. Two, I changed my environment, my diet. And you haven't heard me talk about it yet, but movement and exercise. But that is actually below those other things. And it is really important and up there, but it is not number one. Deal with your crap. I would never tell you not to see your physicians. I'm not a doctor. I would never tell you to come off all your drugs and do what I've done. But I hope this causes a different way of thinking and something for you to start looking in for you. Because if you're listening to this podcast, something in you right now is saying, I feel it. I feel like I need something different. I've seen it happen so many times. And maybe it's a combination of finding these natural, healthier ways of living combined with your physician and medications. Or maybe you are ready to say, if I do all these other things, what if? Your doctors will scare the shit out of you for coming off medications. Sure will. I was told that, well, if I relapse and I get worse, it's on me. And there's nothing they can do about that permanent damage. So for about 3 minutes, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what if I really do this and come off all these medications? What if I get worse? What if? I am just so tired of what if. And I was like, wait a minute. I had prayed. I had some good conversations with God, and I knew this was right for me. And you'll have to know what's right for you. But looking back years ago and having a nurse look at me and tell me, your expectations are too high. You're trying to feel better, and we're just trying to help you not get worse. And I was like, that can't be it. I refuse to accept that. And I'm stubborn. So I was like, no, I'm going to find a way to actually feel better. Thanks very much. Sort of fired my doctor that day. I hired them back later on, but that's beside the point. This is, like I said, this isn't about firing your physicians. It's okay to be scared about looking into new things, but I just want you to know that there's support out there for doing this. And we're going to dive into all these different topics. This was just my story of getting diagnosed. And I, I'm just so glad you have found this space. Um, when we are newly diagnosed, there's so much thrown at us and so much thrown at your partner and your family that it's hard to know what to do, hard to know what's going to help someone or how you can help them. We're going to get into all of those topics too. So I'm really glad you found this space. We are going to do this together. These are going to be real conversations and real life. It's messy. I'm really glad you're here and sharing this with me. We're all going to learn how to be more than fine together. Please tell your friends about this podcast. You can find me on social media, Instagram, YouTube. You have questions, send them in.